Hello everyone, my name is Naguura and today I have a Fellowship beginner's guide for you. I'm going to try to go over everything, especially like smaller tips and tricks to make sure that you guys can get a smooth intro into the game and that you're not missing out on anything. Alright, let's start out with which role should you be playing? Is there any advantages or whatever? Lots of people always ask me what class should I play, what role should I play? And when it comes to roles, there's no necessary like advantage over like from one to the other role. The one thing that is pretty important if you're a solo player, if you're doing solo queue, then tanks have a much shorter queue than others. So if that's something that you care about, if you don't have a pre-made group or whatever, then consider playing a tank. Unless, of course, you hate tanking, then obviously don't do it. Then when it comes to the class that you should be playing, it's not that important. Like, you shouldn't make it such an important decision. Just try them out and see whatever you like. Because at the moment, it's very easy to reroll from one class to the other. All of the currency that you earn on your classes are shared. So you're not wasting your time on one class because the things that you farmed on this one class, you can use on another one if you decide to reroll a little bit later on. And in addition, it's also good to be able to play different classes because maybe in late game, it's actually a good thing to be able to multi-class and play different classes. And in addition, the developers of Fellowship also said that they will be balancing classes eventually in case it turns out that there's like a really big like meta where one class is much better than the other. We haven't really gotten to that point just yet, but if that happens, then I'm sure they will be addressing it and getting some balance patches in. So don't stress too much about what to main, just play whatever you enjoy. Then let's start with the game itself. So once you're in the game, one thing that is important to understand is like the initial reward system. The game is obviously like just a dungeon game. You only play dungeons. There's nothing else. There's no like professions, no open world elements, nothing other than dungeons, basically, right? So the first thing you do is queue up dungeons. But the way you unlock your abilities and your talents goes through this reward system. So to understand the reward system, it looks a little bit weird initially, but this left side here, like this left talent tree, basically is your initial basic talents that you unlock to understand your class. It gives you some of your basic abilities, and it gives you talent points, and it gives you like your basic rewards. You get this by just playing dungeons. Any kind of dungeons. Can be quick play or can be leagues. So this one you just unlock by playing the game. And then later on, these upper rewards here on the right side, they are unlocked through rating. So, the way rating works is through the dungeons, right? I talked about quick play earlier. Quick play doesn't give you items. It gives you these supplies and these mark of fellowships. When you do quick play, you get scaled. Your item level gets scaled. So it is actually really nice initially to just learn your class. And it's nice to... if you're like really low item level, if you don't have any items, then it's nice to not feel so weak, right? And you can use these marks to get a little bit of a head start with gear in case you need it. But I personally wouldn't recommend playing quick play because you can just play contender, which is the first league, the ranked league that I am gonna explain in a second. And that one is like the same difficulty, except your items don't scale, and you get items guaranteed every time. And in addition, you can also get the same supplies as you do in quick play. So I personally just think playing contender makes a lot more sense initially, unless you feel really unsure and you want to learn in quick play first. So if you want to learn your character, play quick play, otherwise focus on contender. Alright, so the way the leagues work is you have Contender first, Adept, Champion, then Paragon, and then eventually you have Eternal. That's like the last endgame. Each league has 6 kind of levels, and the last level, level 7, is a capstone dungeon. So the 6 levels contain of different kinds of dungeons. There's 8 dungeons in totals. The dungeons have 1 boss at the end, and just trash that you have to do. And the capstone dungeons, like the level 7 dungeons, they have 3 bosses and trash, and they're only like at the end of each league. So each league at the end has this so-called capstone dungeon, and you have to complete the capstone dungeon in time to be able to unlock the next league. Once you have unlocked a league, you can do level 1 to 6, no matter which one, especially if you play as a group. If you play with 4 pre-made people, then you can immediately queue up level 6 if you want to, or even level 7. You could unlock Champion and immediately do the capstone dungeon for Champion to unlock Paragon if you would be able to do so and you wouldn't need item level. If you're solo queuing or you're queuing with less than 4 people, then the item level that you have determines which dungeons you get as an option. So if I queue contender now by myself, then eventually once the queue pops, I will get 3 dungeons as an option, as you can see here. And then I can just choose whichever one I want. Then as a group, we're kind of deciding, like the majority of the players decides which dungeon you end up doing. And that, like, the dungeons that you get as an option are determined by your item level. And if you're in a group with less than 4 people, then it would be your average item level that determines it. So if I'm item level 20, I have a friend that is item level 60, and the third friend is item level 40, then our average would be 40. And that item level would then determine which options we get, right? This is important to know because to be able to get the capstone dungeon as an option, you need to be a certain item level on average in your group or also by yourself to be able to even get it. And the way that works is that to get the capstone dungeon for contender, you have to be at least item level 60 on average. And if you're by yourself, you need to be 60. And for adept, you have to be 120 to get the level 7. And for champion, you have to be 180. So you need to make sure to get to that item level before you can even get that capstone dungeon at all. So I'm going to go over some quick tips and tricks once you understood the initial game. Then afterwards, I'm going to go into more details if that's something that interests you. But initially, I just wanted to say that initially timing the dungeons is not that important because you still get loot at the end, and at the start it's just important to get items, right? Because the higher item level your items, those are huge damage boosts. Like, you don't have to focus on secondary stats or anything like that. Just get items, just get upgrades on every single slot and make sure you get high item level items first. If you overtime the dungeon, you still get the same item level as if you would have timed it, unless you're more than 10% over the maximum timer. All right. So if you just barely overtime it, you still get the same item level. And every time you do a leak dungeon, you get a guaranteed item. Like, each person gets a guaranteed item. Then if you're more than 10% over the timer, then your item is 1 rank less than what it would be. So the way the loot works is that depending on the level that you do, the items have that rank. So for example, contender drops contender items, and there are 8 upgrades in total for each league. So there's contender 1 out of 8, contender 3 out of 8, contender 6 out of 8, and so on, and then adept 1 out of 8, and so on, right? And if you do contender 1, then the items that you loot are 2 out of 8. If you do difficulty 2, it's also 2 out of 8, and then if you do 3, it's going to be 3 out of 8. For 4, it's also 3 out of 8, and then it goes to 4 out of 8 for 5. And it just continues like that. You can additionally upgrade the items yourself with gold. If you just go to this blacksmith here and you move an item in, then it will cost you, especially early on when you're low item level items, then it will only cost you gold and nothing else. Alright, so don't worry about timing the dungeons too much. The only important time where you have to time the dungeon is the capstone dungeon. So the level 7 dungeon of each league needs to be timed, otherwise you're not unlocking the next league. Then, one more tip before I go into more details about items and currencies and whatnot else. I wanted to talk about the interrupt markers. That is kind of important early on, that you bind your interrupt markers. So, especially if you're pugging, but also if you're in a group play, then you need to make sure that you bind, well, it's already bound by default, but maybe you want to change it. So the default binding for this is V. And what it does is that it marks a mob with your icon, with your character's icon. And if I then interrupt something, doesn't matter what, then it will show the interrupt cooldown. So you can see I just interrupted, and now I will show the cooldown of my interrupt. This is really, really useful in dungeons because it kind of shows, it does 2 things. It shows your party your cooldown on your interrupt, and it also indicates to your party which mob you're intending on interrupting, right? So if there's 3 casters, the tank can mark 1, and the other 2 damage dealers can mark the 2 other mobs, and then you're kind of indicating, hey, I'm interrupting this mob. So you want to bind this. If you want to change your binding, you just go to settings and you go to input, and then you scroll down to set interrupt target. This is the binding to set your marker. Then another important thing is to bind your trigger interrupt target. What this does is it will use your interrupt ability on your marked target no matter what your current target is, right? So if I target this trading dummy, but I press interrupt now, then my interrupt will be used on the trading dummy that I've marked. And this is important because, of course, there might be like a higher HP mob and a bunch of casters, and you want to interrupt them up, but you don't want to focus them up, right? And they don't have to constantly switch your targets back and forth. So that's also a good thing to do. Then there's a lot of UI optimizations you can do. One thing that I personally did is increase the size of my nameplates. If you go to interface and you scroll down to nameplates, you can increase the size of your nameplates. You can do a lot of things here with vertical margins, like how much distance there is between the nameplates, how far they're apart, how far they go up to your the top of your screen, how high above they above the enemy's heads, and so on. You can play around with this a little bit, see what you like the most. One thing you can also do is create special kind of weak auras. You see how in the middle of my screen there's these abilities, and these are all my cooldowns. And the reason I put them there is because they're just easier for me to see, and it's kind of like a cooldown manager, right? So if you go to Edit HUD, you see here on the right side there's a bunch of things called extra ability bars, and these are what they say they are. They're extra ability bars. But what you can do is you can enable them. And then you basically just put the abilities in there that you want to see the cooldown off. And then you can play around with them, right? You can make it so there's less slots. You can make it multiple rows. You can make it bigger, smaller, slot spacing, right? You can do all kinds of stuff with this. And in addition, you can make them click through, which means that you don't accidentally press them, right? Because if you want them to be in the middle of your screen somewhere, then you don't want them to be pressable, right? So you can make them click through, which is very nice. So play around with this and figure out your own interface. You can also move around your buffs and your debuffs a lot, which is nice as well, right? If you feel like you need to see your debuffs more or your buffs more, you can make them bigger or smaller, move them around wherever you want to see them. And yeah, that's also very nice. Then another tip is to buy the supply box on cooldown because it gives gold. And gold is very important early on, one of the most important things, because you can upgrade items with gold. So if you go to the storekeeper, there's a blacksmith supply box here that you can buy for 12 supplies, and it has an hour cooldown. So you want to buy this like every hour if you have enough supplies, of course. And it just, as I said, it gives you gold and other materials. The materials I'm going to talk about a little bit later, but the gold is going to be most important initially to upgrade your gear. Then you also have Mark of Fellowships, which is another currency you can see here at the bottom of your character tab. And that one you need to buy these other boxes, which also have a cooldown. The cooldown is account-wide, so you cannot buy these on multiple characters, first of all. And one thing I would also suggest is buy the epic supply box as fast as you can. Because it has a really long cooldown, a 7-day cooldown, and it gives you a material that you need to get your best in slot weapon a little bit later on. I'm going to explain that a little bit later. But yeah, try to get this epic box as fast as you can and use the rest of the fellowship marks on the other boxes and just get them on cooldown, just get them rolling to get the materials to get your items later on. Then there's one more thing you can do with interface, and that is tap targeting. So you can actually change your tap targeting according to aggro and to interrupt as well. So here if you go to prioritize low threat, if you're a tank, then you can enable this. So if you're tap targeting, like if you're pressing tap, it will target the mobs that you have the lowest threat on, which is really nice as a tank, because if you're just tapping through the mobs, then it will tap through the lowest aggro targets first, which you then can use to get the aggro back, right? This is very, very nice for tanks. And then you can also enable prioritize interruptible targets. So if you don't use the focus markers and whatnot, then you can tap and it will target your like a caster first, and then you will immediately be able to interrupt. And then there's some other like cool features here. if you want to like play around with this. Then I also wanted to say that you shouldn't be hesitant to upgrade your items. As I said earlier, you need gold to upgrade your items. You can go to this blacksmith and you just kind of upgrade your items with gold. Later on, you will need other materials as well, but early on, it's just gold. The reason why you shouldn't be too hesitant about this is because once you get a higher league item, so let's say you go from adept to champion, then you can replace your blue items with your epic items. And if I get an epic item in the same slot that I already have, then I can just scrap the blue item, get the material back that I used to upgrade it, and upgrade the epic item. You don't get all of the material back, but you get a lot of it back. So that is something that you can for sure do. So now if I would get a epic item shoulder, I could just see, okay, how much gold do I get from scrapping my blue shoulder, and then I can check how much I need to upgrade my epic shoulder, and then I can kind of weigh the difference, right? So definitely just send your gold if you need to be more powerful, especially if you need to get the certain item level thrash points to get to unlock the level 7 capstone dungeon, right? So if you need 60 item level to get the capstone dungeon to proc, then just upgrade some of your stuff to get to 60 to get to get the dungeon unlocked. When it comes to reforging, if you go to this character here, this NPC, it allows you to reforge items. Basically what it does, depending on which material you have, is you can put in an item, and for gold and for material, you will change the item to a different slot. This can be very useful later on. So let's say I have one really good item, but then I get the same item in the same slot. So what do? Oh, I reforge it, right? But one thing I want to mention is that these reforging materials, they're actually not super common. They're actually somewhat rare. And you use the same material no matter the item level of the item. So if you have like a really high item level item, you put it in, it takes the same material as if I put in a green item, right? So I think you should kind of hold on to your material, to your reforging material, and only really use them later on when you get to the higher ranks. Because early on, you will replace your items really quickly. And it just makes more sense, in my opinion, to use gold to upgrade items rather than re-rolling higher items. So instead of re-rolling them, just scrap them. The ones that you have like duplicates of, just scrap them, get the gold, and then use the gold to upgrade the lower tier items, right? I think that makes a lot more sense. And then you can use your upgrade material or your reforged material, you can use for like the better items later on. So I definitely recommend doing that instead. One more thing to mention here is once you get your epic weapon, which is the weapon that has like an actual talent tree, there's only 4 weapons that each character can get. And one of them is probably going to be your best in slot weapon. And if you don't get your best in slot weapon, so if you get an epic weapon, but it's not your best, then you can actually just reforge it with this epic mithril, which I talked about earlier. If you buy the epic box, you get this arcane mithril. And this mithril can be used to reforge an item into another item of the same slot. So if I reforge a weapon, it gives me 3 alternative weapons that I can choose from, which means that I can get any weapon that I want. Since there's only 4 in total for each character, if I reforge a weapon, I will get the other 3 weapons. So I can get my best slot weapon guaranteed if I didn't drop it initially, right? But use this for your epic weapon and not for your blue weapon or for a lower weapon, because the epic weapons are the ones that have the talent tree, and those are going to be like the big weapons that you want to work towards. Let's talk about gearing. So when it comes to item drops, as I said earlier, there's 1 item that drops per dungeon, guaranteed. Contender drops the green items, Adapt the blue items, Champion purple, then Paragon is yellow, and then Eternal would be red items. And each individual league goes from 1 to 8. So there's 1 out of 8 contender and so on, as I said earlier. The items themselves, early on it's only important to get high item level because that's going to be by far the biggest boost. When it comes to secondary stats, we don't really know which class uses which class needs what secondary stats. Like that is something that you have to like play around a little bit depending on which talents you're playing. You can try and see, I have this interaction with crit, maybe I'm gonna try to go for a more crit, but that is only something you can really think about later on, because early on it makes a lot more sense to just scrap your items if you have duplicates. So if you have one piece that has crit and haste and the other one has expertise and crit, just scrap one of them, just kind of, use one and scrap the other. I think playing around with stats is really only valuable once you get to late game and you actually have more items and stuff. Because early on, it's just, item level is going to be king and it's going to be the best by far. So don't worry too much about secondary stats. Then, when it comes to trinkets and relics, the relics are actually what give you special abilities, and there's only a set amount of relics. There's only 9 relics in total. And each relic gives you stats, but then it also gives you a special effect. The effects that every class can get is Chicken Eyes, which turns a mob into a chicken. This can be very useful for boss fights when there are certain ads that you can put into a chicken. Or you can also use this on trash mobs. But if you Chicken Eyes a trash mob, then it doesn't give any count anymore. Just keep that in mind, but it can still be very useful. Then there's a trinket that gives invisibility, a group invisibility, which is really nice for skipping packs. There's a trinket that gives you a gateway or like a portal to click and your whole group can go through. And then there's a movement speed trinket that gives the whole group 50% movement speed. There's a battle rest trinket like this one where you can actually battle rest a player. There's a master spell trinket which dispels debuffs from your whole group, which can be really good for certain dungeons. There's a group damage reduction trinket as well that can also be really good. And then everyone except Ardios and Rhyme can get a health pot trinket as well that just, restores health. And the healers, in addition, can also get a mana pot trinket, which restores some mana if you use it. Weapons are a little bit more complicated. The way the weapons work is that initially a weapon is going to be, if it's white or green, then it only has secondary stats. If your weapon is blue, like my weapon here, then it will have 1 out of 4 different effects, because as I said, each character has 4 weapons. These effects are generic effects. For example, my weapon here that I have is kind of like an arcane mage weapon, so I use this weapon as I use an effect of this weapon onto a mob, and then all of the damage that I do will get stored in this debuff on the mob, and then it will explode for the damage afterwards, or it will do the damage onto the mob afterwards. So this can be really good for certain classes, but just kind of look into them and see what you like. And then once the weapon is purple or onwards, so from champion and onwards, the weapons also get a talent tree. So you can open up the weapon in addition to this effect. So in addition to the Voidbringer's Touch that I have here, I will also get like a whole talent tree with a lot of extra effects. This is going to be a big boost, a big damage boost for all characters. So getting your epic weapon and getting the correct epic weapon is going to be really good. So definitely make sure that you're looking into getting that as fast as possible. And then, as I said, use your mithril to reforge it to the weapon that you want, and look into that. So yeah, that's how the weapons work. Then the other items either have stat bonuses or they have gems. The way the stat bonuses work is that they are league-based or dungeon-based. So there are certain dungeons that have a stat bonus. You can see it if you go to the different dungeons. For example, Godfall's Quarry has a stat bonus called Eldrin Deceit. All of the stat bonuses are 2 items that you need. So you always need 2 items to get the stat bonus. It's never more than 2. And as I said, they're either dungeon-based, so they always drop in a dungeon, or they're league-based. The good thing about the dungeon-based stat bonuses is that if I advance to a next league, then I can continue my stat bonus, right? So if I have a stat bonus, if I have 2 contender items with a stat bonus, and then I do adept, I can get an adept item with the same stat bonus and continue the bonus. The league bonuses are different. They only drop in Adept, or they only drop in Champion, or they only drop in Paragon. You can see the league bonuses if you go to the Capstone dungeon. You can see them because they drop there, but they can drop in all dungeons. But you can see the bonus here on this level 7. So this one here, for example, in Adept is a Dark Prophecy. Your abilities have a chance to increase your haste by 25% for 20 seconds. So you can farm the stat bonus from a leak, or you just stick to the dungeon bonus, or you just do whatever you have currently. Then in addition, there's also sockets that can be in items. I have a socket here, for example, in my wrists. Now, sockets are a little bit more complex to understand, and I honestly wouldn't bother with it too much unless you go into late game. I can quickly give you a TLDR. So if you go to gems here at the bottom, you can see like all of the different rows for gems. There are 6 different gems in total. And it kind of works like Diablo. the more of a gem you have, the more you unlock here, and the better the gem is, the more it unlocks as well. Like for example, I have here like a small ruby and it has 120 gem essence. If I would have a large red ruby, it would be 240 essence, and if it would be a blue one or an epic one, it would be even more gem essence. And this gem essence is what you need to go further up this tree. So to understand what the best gem is for you, I personally would just look, instead of reading all of this, like there's like too much stuff, right? So I would just read the bottom row, like the first talent for each color, and then read the top, and then kind of see if that is something that you would need or not really, right? So just look at the bottom, it's like, oh, this gives crit, haste, expertise, spirit, that seems good, right? And then at the top it says, your relic cooldowns are reduced by 24%. Do you care about relic cooldown reduction or not? Is it something you care about? Then you can read here for a yellow, for example, it says you retain 9% haste from Spirit of Heroism while it's not active. Is haste something you care about? For the red one, it says while in combat with a boss, your damage, healing, and absorption is increased by 12%. This is for bosses in particular, right? Like, do you want to do more damage to bosses? Is this something you care about? And so on, right? But as I said early on, you're not going to have many gems anyway, so don't worry about it too much. In addition, when it comes to gems, you can also change gems and make them better with this guy here. You can basically turn... oh, this is actually just removing them, yeah? Like, if you put a gem into an item, you can remove it afterwards. That's what this is for, basically. But you can fuse gems into a different gem or into a higher gem. So if you have a red... if you have 3 red rubies, or 3 red small rubies, you can turn them into a large ruby. And you can also change rubies into a different color, into a random different color, and so on and so on. But it costs materials, and as I said, it's like not important early on. Let's talk about currency. So the currency is account shared, which means that as I said, if you play a character but it turns out you don't like it as much and you want to play something different, then you can use all of this currency that you farmed on this character on another character to really quickly get gear, really quickly get upgrades, and so that's very nice. So you don't have to be worried about maining the wrong thing or whatever. Supplies and the marks of fellowship, as I talked about earlier, they're used to get these boxes that have material. The most important thing is like the supply box you should buy every time you can to get gold and materials, and also this artisan supply box, the epic one that I said, to get this one epic mithril to get your abyss weapon. Otherwise, just use them on getting random boxes. And as I said, like all of these other materials, like mithril and ether and essences, like all of this stuff, don't worry about it too much. It's all basically materials that you need to reforge items, upgrade items, change them into different items, split gems, upgrade gems. It's not something you really have to worry about initially. The most important thing that you worry about is gold, because that's the main currency you need to upgrade items initially, and scrapping items giving currency back. So just kind of focus on using your gold to upgrade items, scrapping items to get gold back, and so on and so on. So yeah, I think that's all that I have for you so far. I hope I managed to teach you a thing or two about the game. I hope it wasn't too complicated. I hope I got all of the information out that I learned so far. There's certainly going to be more things I learn as I go, and then I'm going to do, once I get into Paragon and Eternal, I can do another video with like some updates. But I do hope that this was helpful and that you get a good start into the game, or if you're already playing, maybe you also learned a thing or two as well to improve your gameplay and to improve your experience. So yeah. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Of course, also doing WoW videos still and other gaming videos. I'm also streaming over at twitch.tv Naguura. If you want to ask any questions, you can ask in the stream. I'm streaming quite a lot, streaming a lot of Fellowship, but also WoW and other games. And if you have other questions, you can ask in the comments below. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a good one. Goodbye. Hey, it's 30 minutes. Okay, I mean, that's kind of long. I wanted to do 15 to 20, but... I mean... Fuck, there was just so much to say. I don't know. There's so many things to say.